Hey folks, welcome back to the Velo Performance Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Richie, one of my cyclists that I coach here at Velo, who I got to go to the World Transplant Games in Australia this year. What's inspiring about Richie is where he's come from. He was diagnosed with cancer and has gone through so much treatment, it's unreal. Listening to his story, literally, when you hear this story, you will sit there gobsmacked about what he's been through and how he's come out the other side. And for me, listening to him and talking to him, it's made me realise that actually all of us need to grab life and run with it. So I think when you listen to this podcast, you'll, a bit like me, be sat there gobsmacked, not saying very much, just listening to what he went through. It is really fascinating. So without further ado, let's get into the podcast. Richie, welcome to the podcast. So good to have you on. For the people listening, I'm going to let Richie chat, so I'll shut up in a bit. But Richie and I have been working with each other for 6 months, and he's got a really interesting story. So look, over to you, Richie. Tell us about yourself, who you are, what we've been doing together. If we go right back to the start, talk to us about what kind of sport you did and your cancer diagnosis and how everything sort of evolved from that point onwards.
Yeah, okay. So thanks for having me, first of all, Simon. My name's Richie Sheerin. I'm from Derry in Ireland, and I've always been fairly active. I played a lot of football, Gaelic football, but then as I get older, obviously injuries started creeping in, and decided I would go to what I thought was a slightly easier sport, cycling, to get away from the ankle and knee injuries. And that wasn't the case. As we all know, cycling is far from easy.
I'm just chuckling there, actually, Richie. It's like I went from Gaelic football to cycling because I thought it was easier.
Yeah, I know it was, and I was talking on this. So, well, firstly, it was easier because I started mountain biking, and that was just great fun. It wasn't overly hard. You cycled in the granny ring the whole way up the top of a hill, and then you went as fast as you can down it with doing jumps and stuff. So that was quite fun. But then I discovered road cycling. And so if anybody knows where Derry is, kind of Buncrana is in Donegal, which is about 10 miles from the city and 10 miles back. And my first road bike ride was to there. And I thought, geez, this is easy. But not knowing what a tailwind was. So we were flying down towards Buncrana, like 25 miles per hour. And then I thought, this is handy. And then we turned to come back because it was just a straight out and back loop. And I was like, oh my God. This isn't easy. But kind of once you get back on, it's like anybody, it's the first time cycling, that exhilaration kind of when you get off the bike, and then I was hooked, right? But so that went on for a few years. I got married in 2012. We had our son Aiden in 2016, and then cycling just became harder because of obviously working all week and then trying to get out for long runs at the weekend. It just wasn't possible with having a small kid. So I turned to running, and I was doing 5 kilometers, which I ended up then doing half marathons and trying to be competitive at those, but I was never a great runner. And then 2017, I'd done the half marathon, and I then started doing some cross country under the winter. And I thought, right, I'll take December off. And during that time in December, I got speaking to a few old Gaelic football mates, and they wanted me to come back up to Gaelic football just as an old hand to kind of help out and kind of help the team that there. I always played defence, and the guys were quite young in the defence line, and they kind of wanted someone to come on there to help with communication and those type of things. And I thought, I can't commit, but I'll come up and do a bit of pre-season training. So first day up was, I think it was the first week in January or whatever it was, and we did the famous bleep test. That was fine. My thranness kind of kicked on there, where I wanted to kind of stay as long as the young boys, and I think I finished like fourth last, so I did quite well. But then towards the end of the session, we were doing like agility and sprinting tests and things, and I just remember kind of on one of the last sprints, as I sprinted out left and then to go to turn right, just something popped in the hip and just didn't feel right. And just me thinking that I hadn't played any kind of physical sports other than that up and down movement, cycling or running, no twisting and turning, just thought, old age, it'll be fine. So the weeks and months kind of went on and wasn't getting any better. So I think in the middle of February, I started going physio because it was starting to get a lot sore. And few sessions in physio, things were fine. Physio said, look, I can't see anything wrong with you, and maybe go and try a few different sort of tests, and if nothing comes of those, we'll send you for MRI. And then coughing and sneezing started becoming really sore in March. And it was at this point that I remember I was dropping Aiden to my mum. She was watching him as I was going on to work. And it was the Thursday. And my brother's girlfriend, who works in the same physio practice as the physio that I was attending, I said, tell such and such, kind of his advice was crap, kind of, and he told me to go on the treadmill and try. Maybe it was just all in my head now, the pain, and go on the treadmill and try it. And it just got really sore at that week, even more than what it was. And I said, look, tell him he's full of crap. Coughing and sneezing now really sore as well. And then she said to me, Richard, please go and your doctors and get checked for a hernia, because it sounds that potentially with the sneezing that something's not right there. So as we all know, it's so hard to get a GP appointment. And that Thursday, after I dropped Aiden to my mum's, I was driving down the road towards the office, and it was just gone 9 o'clock. I thought, I'll try the doctors, and I got through right away, right? So that was a blessing in itself. And I says, look, my physio's recommended an emergency appointment to get checked for a hernia. And I got on that day. No hernia is found, and it's not a nice examination if anybody's had a hernia check done before. But no hernias were found. And he says, look, can you come back tomorrow and we'll do some inflammatory routine blood tests? I said, right, okay, no problem. So I'm back on the Friday, blood test done, that was fine. Over the weekend, our boy Aiden, he wasn't well, and Lisa was going to take him to the doctors on Monday or Tuesday if he hadn't got any better. So start of the week, everything kind of was as normal. Pain obviously and stuff was still there. I went to the physio on the Tuesday morning, and he said, look, I can't find your iliac crest anymore, when I was doing examinations. And he said, look, we're going to have to send you for MRI. Something's not right. And I went back into work that afternoon, and my phone started going crazy. Messages, phone calls. So what's going on here? And I seen a message from my wife saying, answer your phone quick, something about bloods. And right away, my heart sank, thinking she had taken Aiden to the doctors and something was up. Completely forgetting that I had the blood test on the Friday. So I rang her right away. She says, hang up your phone. It's your bloods. Your doctor's trying to ring you. So I hung up the phone, private number popped up, the doctor, and he says, are you sitting down? And I says, what is it? And he says, we need you. We're in the cancer center tomorrow. We're highly suspicious of multiple myeloma. And I'm like, right, okay. Kind of that lights go off type moment, kind of what is this? Kind of left the meeting room, went back to my desk, Google multiple myeloma, incurable bone marrow cancer, and you're like, right, what do you do here? So
literally at work Googling it straight off the phone.
Yeah, and it's one of these things, and Google has you dead before you even have a chance to breathe, right? So, and the other thing then, I had literally just joined this company about a month. So I knew very few people. I hadn't built up that camaraderie or kind of any friendships and stuff. So I went to the HR manager, and I kind of, as I went in through the door, it kind of just hit me what I'd just been told, and I kind of broke down a bit, and she kind of broke down with me, and she just gave me a hug and says, look, just go home. And kind of I had to jump back in the car, and I was ringing my wife, and remember she had already rang my parents and things, and they were asking me all these questions over the phone. I said, guys, I'm in the dark as much as you. Let's get to tomorrow. Let's get over to the hospital and just see what's what. And I got home, and my mum and dad, they were there. So yeah.
That moment when you're told, I mean, you're on your own, right?
Yeah.
At work, and that's like someone hitting you with a sledgehammer, and it takes a while for it to hit you.
100%. And the way I explained it was like you were in a room, and someone just turned the lights off, and just that there was the fuzziness, that blackness of like, right, what's next. And especially when you read incurable bone marrow cancer, and then when you hear bone marrow and you think of everybody that you've ever seen, the likes of the different blood cancers like leukemia, and how bad they look, and kind of be like, oh my God, this is ahead of me type of a thing. So again, I never kind of jump to conclusions or assumptions. I kind of just take it as it is, and kind of that type of a person, kind of each day, and kind of try not and worry about what you can't control, right? So got home, and again, it was just bombarding of questions and hugs and tears, and like, can we just get to tomorrow? Let's just finish today. Today's done. Let's just get to tomorrow. And went over to the hospital, and just was a lab rat for I think 2 days. Like I was at full body X-ray, full body MRI, more blood tests, a bone marrow biopsy, and then on this Thursday they sent me up to Belfast for a full body PET scan, and basically came back on the Friday and just confirmed everything that there was a massive tumor in the pelvis. So that's where the pain was coming from. It was like 11 by 9 by 11 centimeters. It destroyed the iliac crest. It was destroying the connective tissue and the glutes and the core, all around that. But I thought it was a thigh muscle issue, and it turned out it was a bloody tumor growing the size of a watermelon inside my pelvis. So yeah, so basically they because it was just a solitary tumor at this point, they diagnosed me initially as solitary bone plasmacytoma. But when you do any of the reading, anything over 5 centimeters, it progresses to multiple myeloma fairly quickly. So they started me on radiotherapy, and at this point, I was like, right, I wasn't overweight or anything. I was quite healthy. I'd been doing the running and things, and I was still, even with that massive tumor, I was still going to the gym, lifting weights, leg pressing, squatting, deadlifting, and I was like, but it felt weak, right? But I was still doing it, and so it was in all right condition. But when I got the news, I was like, right, I like I mentioned before, I do what I can do, what's in my control, and I'm like, right, let's sort the diet out, let's cut out processed crap, you do more research and it tells you to go off dairy, go off beef. So I went completely plant-based, did whatever I could do to try and let's get the body in really good condition, because what I knew was maybe potentially coming ahead for me was going to be a lot of toxicity and radiotherapy and this type of thing. So
But that was your, like, I mean, if I had been in that situation, I may have gone off the rails a little bit for at least a short time and go, fuck it, I'm eating what I want.
yeah, and so we'll get to that. but so that was fine. I went through the radiotherapy. It was 5 weeks of radiotherapy it was 5 weeks. It was every day bar the weekend for 5 weeks. So that was, unfortunately, the cancer centre in Derry hadn't opened at the time. So I was up and down to Belfast a fair bit for that. But it took about a month for the change in diet to kind of kick in. But honestly, after the radiotherapy finished, it was the best I had ever felt. I had dropped down to like low 70 kilos. My skin was radiant, my hair, loads of energy. I'd cut out all the crap. The pain had gone, and kind of I thought, right, I'll kind of get back into doing some more endurance type exercise now that I kind of look more like an endurance athlete, a bit thinner and leaner and things, and not stocky. And so unfortunately then on the September, back in for the review appointment after the radiotherapy, and as we kind of had suspected anyway, like 5 or 6 new tumors had popped up throughout the body, even though I was still feeling great on myself. And basically they were millimeters in size. The PET scan picked these up. They were quite small. So come the December, basically the consultant said in the September, we'll review you again in 3 months and see how things are behaving. So it was the week before Christmas 2018, and they had went from millimeters to centimeters after the scan in December. I'm like, well, we have to start you on chemotherapy, because it seems quite aggressive that so many has come back so quickly that they've went from millimeters to centimeters. And what we want to do is we'll try for a tandem stem cell transplant. So by tandem, what they try and do is they condition your body and try and reduce the disease load as much as possible. Then they harvest your stem cells, they obliterate your own bone marrow, and then they graft your stem cells back on. So you grow your own immune system again, but like kind of like a restart, like a Control
Like
Alt
a
Delete,
reboot.
a reboot, exactly. And then hopefully find a donor match and do it again. And the thinking behind it is, if they get a really good response after the first stem cell transplant, then they hit you again with a brand new immune system, because you've had a nice reformat, reboot, and then they try and deepen their response and prolong the remission, because like I said before, it's incurable, so it always comes back. So they try and get you into a deep remission, and so that before it comes back is a longer period of time. So I started off the chemotherapy at the start of 2019, and it was this point where kind of went off the rails a bit, but at the same time, I thought I need to keep exercising because I want the body to be fit. So I kind of went off the whole vegan, plant-based type diet and just started eating what I wanted again. But I thought, when I was told about multiple myeloma and the risks around it, basically the consultant says, look, you need to stop sport, you need to stop anything physical, because what it does to your bones, it turns them almost like honeycomb. So the myeloma cells proliferate within the bone marrow, and they reduce the density of the bone, but then they also reduce your red blood cells and your white blood cells. So then that's how you're more prone to infection and sickness and things like that. And you can't fight off those things. So I thought, right, okay, I sold up everything. Sold my time trial bike, sold my road bike, sold my mountain bike. And actually, before I did that, I had used a road bike because I bought myself a smart trainer. And I thought, I can't cycle outside, I can't run, I can't play football, I'll cycle inside. And I remember Zwift from years previous, and I just renewed my subscription, jumped on Zwift and thought, I'll do 20 minutes here and see how I go. And nearly an hour had passed and I'd done a race, and I was like, this is it. This is the new kind of vice for me to kind of get away from things. And so I jumped on the bike, sold up everything, changed the turbo trainer to a smart bike, and kind of just cracked on with that. 3 months into I was feeling strong on the bike, but I was also on steroids, which probably were potentially helping. I don't know, because they do give you that bit of a lift. 3 months, everything looked great, and the chemotherapy cycle, one of the tumors had disappeared. The majority of them had reduced by at least 50% in size. Thought, right, okay, we're something's going right here. And then in July, I got that same dull, achy pain that I had in my pelvis and my rib cage here. And I said to the consultant, something's not right. And they did a scan, and kind of all the tumors were back up to the original size. The protein that they had found initially in the blood was rising again. And at this point, the consultant says, look, I'm not a specialist in multiple myeloma. We're going to have to seek other advice here, because this treatment regime isn't working for you. You've now become refractory to these chemotherapy drugs. And luckily enough, the company I was in had private health insurance. So as anybody, well, maybe not anybody, but me, I like to find out information. And from the day I got that diagnosis, I was on Google, I was researching medical papers, I was finding other people that were doing similar stories to me. And this is a strange story. I came across this guy on Twitter, and he was Turkish, but his mom was the patient of multiple myeloma. He was an economist, but he could read medical papers and he understood the language, and he was arming me with questions to go into my consultant. And it was broadening my kind of knowledge of the disease, and kind of the right type of treatment that I needed based on what was going on with me and other people that were similar. So that week, after I heard the news that we're going to have to go, I don't know what treatment to give you. We either hit you with hard chemo, or we try another combination chemotherapy to get you to transplant. And that day, I reached out to the guy from Turkey, and he says, go and contact Dr. Michael O'Dwyer from Galway. He's in Ireland. So I contacted Michael Dwyer on Twitter, and he right away got straight back to me, and he says, look, I can't treat you because you're in Northern Ireland and you're part of the NHS. Your insurance won't cover it. But I really recommend Professor Kui Young out of the University College Hospital in London. Here's her details. So I checked out. She was covered under the private health insurance. I booked an appointment with her on the Thursday. I flew over to London on the Thursday, had a consultation with her. And I had been asking all this time for more in-depth testing, kind of what was going on with me. And I just think in the NHS, that's just not possible, right? They're limited to what they can do. And she said, right, we need to test you for this, test you for that. And it's all the things I had been asking for. And she says, and we need to get you on the old school chemotherapy to get you ready for transplant. Rather than just try something else, which is kind of the standard approach with cancer, right? And that's what hurts people so much and hurts their body so much, is step therapy. Try this, doesn't work, try this, and then the body becomes so toxified and all the rest. So basically, that's when the cancer kind of really kicked in, because the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy to this point wasn't really affecting me, other than about a weight gain with the steroids, but there was no hair loss and the typical kind of cancer side effects. But this stuff hit me hard. It was 3 96-hour infusions. So it was like Pinocchio. I was kind of hooked on here. The IV machines, and 96 hours sleeping was an absolute nightmare. But this had you kind of knocked your immune system.
Sorry, say that again. 96 hours of chemo.
Yeah. So just constant drip under the two arms. It was 5 different types of chemotherapy. So it's called RD pace, and R was Revlimid, which is the chemotherapy. The D was dexamethasone, which is the steroids, and then pace. I'm not even going to try and pronounce those names, but each, the P, A, C, and E were 4 different chemo drugs The one I do remember is doxorubicin, which is known as the devil juice because it's red in color and it's one of the most potent toxic chemotherapy agents out there. So
You
that,
must have felt what was done. Well, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but how did you feel after that?
so it doesn't kind of hit you right away. So they call it the nadir, and that's basically where you go down, 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 flat line, and then they expect your immune system then to kind of start coming back up. And it's only when you hit that bottom pit is kind of where the body kind of stops working, because like all the bacteria and stuff that goes on within your body that your body's not coping with it anymore, because there's no immune system, no immune function to do that. So that was kind of, that's when you start feeling crappy. Although I wasn't sick, just very lethargic. I bruised very easily because obviously the platelets and stuff had dropped off and things like that. Had to get multiple blood transfusions, and I was kept in hospital. So that was kind of quite hard, and not being able to see Aiden because of the type of ward it is and the type of cytotoxic drugs that were going through my body. It just wasn't safe for him to be there as well. So I missed my birthday that year, and also missed his very first day of nursery, and that was tough. But they had let me out to go to his nursery as long as I masked up and all the rest of it. And I was no longer on the QR 5 minutes, and my bloods hadn't come back from that morning. And the nurse rang me, says, "Look, Richard, we need you back in. You're neutropenic, which means I have no immune system and no white blood cells. We can't let you go out." So I was already on the QR. I was going to the nurse's school for his first day, and I was like, "Oh, that hit me hard." I went back and I cried for a full day, just because kind of it was then I was like, this disease robs so much, from everybody. And like, and then so that was grand. I got through those, and it bloody worked. They got the disease under control.
How
Um,
long? How long was that set of treatment?
so it was August to October. So I was in hospital 4 weeks at a time. Obviously hooked up for 96 hours. In the last one in the October, because obviously the body, I'm not sure how it was working, but the body was getting a bit more used to being hit and coming back. So my immune system was coming back that bit quicker. So I got out on day release basically, but I had to go back on every night. So then they did the tests. The disease was kind of well under control. So what they did then was they sent me up to Belfast for apheresis, where they hook you up either arm and they just pull the blood out. And the apheresis, they basically separate the plasma and your stem cells from the blood, and you can see it being filled up in this bag up on the right hand side. But because of everything that had happened and the bone marrow, I was kind of quite slow to generate the stem cells. So I had to go back, I think it was 3 days, and that was like 8-hour days lying, not being able to move because these big huge needles in your arms and it's just circulating. So that was fine. Got to that, and then in November I went on for the stem cell transplant. I had no idea what it entailed. Everybody tells you, right? And you kind of have an idea that it's going to be tough. You hear the stories, and kind of there's a mortality rate and stuff with it as well, and that's all in the back of your head. But you go into this room, and it's like a double sealed room, like a clean room, because obviously when they hit you with a payload of the chemo, you have no bone marrow, you have nothing. So you were, at this point it was 2019, so you were allowed visitors. So my mum and Lisa and things like that they could come up and see me. And so, but that was tough. They hit me with the chemo on day 0, and then day 1 they infused the T cells back in. Around day 4 or 5, the chemo really started to do its work. Or it was around then, and so one of the side effects is mucositis. So the chemotherapy is called methylene, and it's like mustard gas. It's the stuff they used in the wars years ago, and it was like they found right that it's very good at killing off fast multiplying cells and all the rest of it. So that's what cancer cells are. So it destroys like the lining of your mouth, your stomach, your hair loss, obviously, because they're fast growing cells. So very quickly you get sick very, very quickly. But again, I didn't have the typical kind of like vomiting. Obviously, out the other side was quite tough. And one of the things that I bring in, and I would advise anybody, hopefully not many people have to go through it, but through transplant, is wet wipes. Toilet paper doesn't cut it when you're constantly going. And that the mucositis got me really bad. So one of the things to do is to give you ice pops. To try and the whole theory behind it is if here's nice and cool, then the blood isn't going up there as much. So kind of maybe the chemo drug won't go there and attack those cells that are reproducing so quickly because the blood flow going to there is less. So that's why, but that didn't work. I had really severe mucositis. I started getting really sore swallowing to the point then I couldn't swallow spit. And at this point I thought, like, this is this it? Is this kind of where it comes, like? And then the doctor came in, and what really kind of put me into a kind of a bit of a downer was, we have to put you on a syringe driver to manage this pain. And so then he said, we're going to send in the palliative a team. And you're like, right away you think palliative, you think, anybody here syringe drivers end of life, but the nurses reassured me, look, this isn't end of life palliative care. This is palliative care to make you comfortable, because the ordeal you're going through, and we need you to kind of be able to consume fluids and eat, because we need you to build you back up. But when you hear those things, that was just tough. I was 10 days on a syringe driver, and
Now,
that was,
I can't imagine how mentally or what mentally you're going through. You must go through horrible ups and downs.
you do. And what I tend, and for me, it's my way of dealing with it, and it probably wasn't too good on my wife. I kind of shut off when it got to that point, and I just kind of, I wanted to I didn't sleep. I maybe dozed on and off, but you were getting bloods taken out of you every couple of hours, so you didn't really get much sleep anyway. But I just wanted to kind of curl up and kind of just lie there and kind of just like, let's get it over with. Wait for the news that your immune system's starting to come back and you're getting closer to that release date where you can get out. So 10 days of the syringe driver, and I kind of noticed kind of the swallowing started getting better. I started trying things like rice pudding and things like that, because I hadn't eaten in 10 days either. So they had IV fluids going under me. They kind of keep me obviously hydrated and those type of things. But the immune system came back, thankfully. This was towards the end of November, 2019. I got out. I think, I can't remember now. I've kind of blanked it in my mind, but it was either the end of November or early December. I got out and got home. And at this point, like, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, kind of, it looked scary. Aiden it wasn't overly frightened. He knew it was his daddy. Aiden at this stage, he was 3, just turned 3 when I had my stem cell transplant. And so he just wanted his usual crack. He just wanted to have fun with his daddy and things. And you forget yourself when you come back out, because obviously your hemoglobin's like, I think it's something like, my hemoglobin was hovering on around about 70 or 80, and like, normal man is like 130 odds. And when it gets to 90, that was my cutoff that I needed a blood transfusion. So hovering on around about that, and you don't realize, because you're sitting down a lot of the time, you're kind of just chilling out, and then it's bedtime for Aiden, and he says, right, Dad, I want to go to bed. And okay, so you take him for bed and you throw him onto your shoulders, completely forgetting yourself, and then you go and take a couple of steps in the stairs, and you're like, whoa, and then they put you down here, and you need to sit in the stairs and kind of take a wee second, do a couple of stairs, and away you go. And it's only then when it hits you that what you've kind of been through. Then around Christmas time came, 2019, and something kind of, I don't know, I can't explain the feeling, but something felt different, something felt a bit better, like a renewed lease of life. And I thought, right, okay, we'll see how things go over the next couple of days. We get into January, and I thought, right, I'm going to start January 2020, how I started January 19, and get back on the bike. And so did that. Started feeling better. I had a scan mid-January, and then a few days later after the scan, I got a text from a consultant in London saying, your scan looks good. Right, so I thought, what does this mean? And she rang me. So this is kind of almost the exact same as 2018 when I was diagnosed. I was told, and nobody rang me, right? I was kind of, but then the exact same thing. I was told that they couldn't find cancer anymore on that day. She says, we can't find cancer from your scan. It looks like we had a really good response. Lisa wasn't there. I was in the living room on my own. It's like elation now at this point, but who do you tell? So rang a phone and those type of things. But she says, I'll ring you back. I'm the consultant. But when she rang me back, she brought me back down to earth again. She says, right, we need to get you back on for the second transplant. We're going to test your brothers to see if any of them are a donor match.
So even though you were cancer free,
yeah,
they wanted to do a second transplant.
Yes, because it always comes back. What they wanted to do, if they've hit me with a deep remission, they want to send it deeper, right? So this new immune system that had come out had got rid of the cancer, as well as the chemotherapy. but it was my immune system, and the cancer had already fooled my own immune system.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so let's put on a new one, and that'll keep it away longer. If not, potentially it could have been curative, but unfortunately it wasn't. But we'll get to that hopefully shortly. I've been chatting away here for ages. So yeah, I was supposed to go on for the second transplant in March. So I have 4 younger brothers. I'm the eldest of 5. And my middle brother Damien, he was a donor match. So they got him on, harvested his stem cells, froze them, and starting to prep me up. And then COVID struck in 2020. So as I told you before from the previous transplant, you lose your bone marrow, you lose your immune function. So it's very unsafe when there was a killer pandemic going about. They have a transplant. So it was put off until COVID had died down that summer, and I went down in August of 2020. So from January onwards, I just cracked on the bike. I'd started back on Zwift. I seen more and more people were getting on Zwift because of COVID. And I hadn't.
One thing I was going to say is like, this is where we kind of started to connect, I think, because I remember we connected a while back. So I remember you being diagnosed with cancer, and I sent you a message saying, because I still can't remember how we originally sort of met each other. And it was through a friend of a friend. But I sent you a message saying, if there's anything I can do, let me know. And you were like, cool, man. But we just kind of left it
Yeah,
like that.
it was that. Go ahead.
Occasionally, you and I messaged backwards and forwards about nutrition and sort of like, training and stuff
Yeah.
while you were going through bits and pieces. And then it was at this point, while you were starting getting back on the bike, I think we connected again because I remember seeing you. I was like, it's really cool to see you on the bike.
Yeah.
And
it was this point that kind of Racing Without Borders was formed, because some of us jumped on Zwift, and I thought, right, more people are going to do this. So I reached out to a few guys, says, what about we do this, start about a racing, set up our own. At the time there was like a under club league with local clubs. I thought, why don't we do something like this in Ireland? It would be good fun. And there was already like-minded people doing this, so there was 4 or 5 of us at the time, and it just exploded. It went from like handful of people. We were, the hassle with meetups and having to send the invites. So we were maxing out our 100 invites. We were putting on 2 or 3 group rides on a Wednesday evening.
Just quickly, or maybe we go into it later, but tell us just quickly about Racing Without Borders.
Yeah, so Racing Without Borders is just a bunch of lads from all over Ireland and now beyond that just wanted to race their bikes virtually and have the crack. And the guys are fantastic. Like, what started out like 4 or 5 of us, it's now our community is like 4,500 people on. We have 19 race teams, 4 of which are ladies only, and to be honest with you, that's unheard of in itself. Having that many ladies actually racing within a club, and it just went from strength to strength. So yeah, I've been racing away with those guys kind of when I've been able to cycle on the bike and sort of be competitive going through treatments. But then August 2020 came back on for the second transplant. This one was slightly different. So they didn't want to completely obliterate the bone marrow, but what they wanted to do is crack it open and allow my brother's stem cells to go on and graft. And then the science behind this stem cell transplant is that they want you to have what's called graft versus host disease, or GVHD, where the new immune system cells attack good parts of the body. So attack me essentially. And they want that to happen because the theory behind it is if they attack the good cells, then if the cancer rears its head again, it'll go after the cancer and kill that as well because it's unknown to it. It hasn't been fooled by it before. So obviously there's a bit more monitoring and stuff with this type of stem cell transplant. They have you on like a suppressant drug to ensure his immune system doesn't kill me right off the bat, and then they slowly reduce that over the course. So that was fine. My recovery off that transplant was a bit quicker. I was in hospital a bit longer and on longer treatment, but I recovered a lot quicker off that one. No mucositis, no Sheeran drivers, none of that, but constant nausea. But no sickness or anything. So that was good. It was at this point, I was telling my doctors when I was going back and forward, for the review appointments, about the transplant games. I was told then that have I heard about them? And I said no, because my consultant could see that cycling was a great mental medicine for me, and he seen what it was doing for me, not just mentally, right, but physically. So I connected with the team manager, and obviously COVID was still in place, so nothing happened in 21. Unfortunately, the cancer came back in April in 21, and a tumor had popped up in the right thigh. So they started me on an oral chemotherapy drug that zapped that. But then another one popped up in November of 21 on the left thigh. And at this point, the consultant says, look, we're going to take you off chemotherapy. There's very little kind of we can do. Now, because you've exhausted an awful lot of lines of therapy, your body's been through a hell of a lot. But what we will try is we'll take T cells or lymphocytes, a type of white blood cell from your brother, and we'll just infuse them right into you, and we'll try and overload your system with T cells and see if that, because what can happen is a T cell can become lazy within your body and not recognize the threat and go and kill it. So T cells are your fighter immune cells. So they did 4 donor lymphocyte infusions at the start of 22, and that put me under remission, and touch wood, I've been there since April 22. But also coming off the chemotherapy oral tablet was perfect, because then in January, when me and you hooked up properly to get this training plan sorted, I was off chemotherapy, I was less lethargic. I still wasn't recovering like how I used to recover after hard effort, but it was at this point I knew I could just, I'm a disease free, let's crack on and have a really good go at basically training. I talked to you, but I think it was too short of notice to try and set up a training plan, because Leeds was kicking on for that July in 22. I got ahead of myself there. And we just had some conversations, and you says, I do this and do that, and kind of just watch yourself and what you're doing. And I went to Leeds, the British Transplant Games, and won it. Set the fastest time, the time trial, albeit it was only a 5 kilometer time trial, but it worked for me with Zwift. If anybody races in Zwift, your 1 minute, your 5 minute power is key. And that's what obviously we trained on in Zwift, because with the racing. So for me, I was just going off 5 minute power for that 5K TT, and I won it. And so then that got me selected for the World Transplant Games, which just happened there in April past. And this is where me and you really hooked up and got on the velo performance, and kind of really dialed in and tuned in the training. And we've been working with each other very closely, almost nearly weekly, if not daily sometimes, from January. So yeah, it's been really cool. And I went to Australia there, and I came away, my first World Transplant Games, came away with 2 bronze and a gold medal. So I got a bronze in the 10 kilometer time trial, and I got a bronze in the 30 kilometer road race, and we're the world team time trial champions. Me, Sean from Liverpool, and Nick from Wales. So a real mix of accents there in a team time trial, which is all about communication, but it bloody worked.
There is a joke in there somewhere.
Yeah, there is, for sure. But we won by nearly 2 minutes. The Belgians beating the Australians by a second, and the second and third place. But it was like, for me, and we've done team time trials on Zwift, and it's the best part of racing for me on the bike is that camaraderie, and kind of that, you're shouting, you're roaring at each other, you're spurring each other on. It really brings the team aspect back into cycling, team time trials. And the elation when we came off the back of it, we kind of knew we had won. And it was so funny. One of the laps, we just kept pushing hard from the start. And one of the laps, we came around the finishing bend, and I drove really hard out of the sector, and not realizing I kind of dropped the 2 guys. And I could hear the commentator, oh, the team GBNI, they set out very hard, but it looks like it's all falling apart. But so I look around behind me, and I could see the gaps. We quickly closed the gaps, and we just sailed. We just kept going and going, and obviously came out victor. So it was a really, really good experience.
That's amazing. Oh, you're going to go back again, aren't you?
I am. So hopefully if health stays well, the next one, it's a bit closer to home right now, which is easier to get to. It's in Dresden in Germany in 25. I'm going to actually go back to the British Games now in July. That's in Coventry. So I'm looking forward to going over there, and I'm trying to retain the titles that I won in 2022. And I suppose, I don't know if we want to kind of talk about what my message is off the back of this, or kind of what I want to say, but it's like, there's life after diagnosis. It's...
Yeah, I mean, look, let's talk about that, because, I'm listening. I mean, what you've gone through is horrendous, and it sounds like it can come back, and that must be quite difficult to deal with. and yet you're super positive. Everything you're saying is like, well, I had to go through all of this, but my whole mindset was like, let's get over it and move on.
Yeah, but I think it was some chat with you as well, right? There was weeks where I was like, Simon, this is crap. Like, what's going on? Like, really, almost ready to throw the towel in, and you're to say, look, we all have crap weeks.
Yeah.
Your training's there. Kind of believe, trust the process, and we did that. Then we went over and we came back with 3 medals, and it's those wee chats as well. And like, sometimes you just need that someone just to give you the nudge, the shoulder to say, look, it's
Look,
okay.
again, that's the cool thing about having a coach, and also having someone that is fighting your corner. We all, my great mates who, loads of people at my age will go, oh, what the hell's you doing that for? It's a bit unnecessary. It's like, I've got people who are in my side of the camp going, look, you need to do more, you can do more, all that stuff. And having that little camp of people that are going, push forward, you can do this. Sometimes it's better to back it off, and having a coach go, don't worry about this, doesn't matter whether you can't do this session today or if you didn't hit the numbers, we can replace it here and we can do this. But having someone to go, keep going, it's going to work, makes that difference, right? But it's also, what's cool about working with you and everybody that I work with is that it's having that support system. It's having someone to go, hang on a minute, hang on, don't stress about this right now. We can get you where you need to get to. We just need to flow it in a way that's going to work. And sometimes that's really straightforward, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult.
There's a kind of phrase that I really hate, and it's always told to anybody that gets an illness or gets a sickness, that you have to accept a new normal. And for me, it's like, why do you accept? So I'm so thrown. When I was told I wouldn't never bike again, I'm like, right, okay. You're not going to tell me kind of what to do. I'm just very thrown with that, and it almost made me get back on the bike even more so. And when I did that quick, what I thought was going to be 20 minutes on Zwift and felt exhilarated after, it was like, right, okay, sack your new normal. I'm going to have my normal, and and just drive it on, and I've said it loads of times, and it's a phrase now. It's just part of me telling what I've been through. Cycling's my mental medicine. It's been so many people's mental medicine throughout COVID, and I'm sure through illness and sickness too. And even people that don't cycle, like it's probably their go-to when they're recovering off an injury, like a football player or a runner. They jump on a bike, it's low impact, but it's so, cycling is so powerful. The people you meet kind of understanding your body. It's fascinating. You go to places that you don't think you could probably go to on the bike sometimes, and maybe not everybody's like that, and I don't want everybody to be like that, but racing on a bike, you need to be able to kind of understand your body and know that there is a bit more in there if you just kind of turn that dial a wee bit extra.
So look, I love that attitude of I've been told I can't, but I'm doing it anyway. Yeah. And actually, it's generally the attitude I have. It's like everything, until you can actually honestly turn around and say, I can't do this anymore, this is too tough, there's always the possibility of pulling it out the bag and doing more.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that attitude, it's like, no, it's a screw you attitude. I'm going to show you that it is possible. I remember about years ago when I was a PT, and I was approached by a young girl who had knee surgery, and her surgeon had turned around to her and said, you will never play sport again, and you'll never play what was she doing? She was playing volleyball. And I was like, well, that's rubbish. I was like, you just need to train for it. So we need to do proper strength work in it, work on posterior chain, making sure that you can gradually build up to jumping in a ballistic way that you can physically manage it. And she was like, do you think so? I was like, well, put it this way. If you can't, you'll just still be really badass, because you'll still be able to run and do things like that. But let's see what we can do. I can't make any promises, but let's just work together and see how we do it. She went back and she played for Scotland.
That's brilliant. It really is. And like there's some of the guys that was over me. There's a guy from Scotland, and he's had a heart transplant, and he's doing a time trial. He's pushing his body to the absolute limit that he can with this new heart muscle that he's had put on his body. And it's like, right, that's for me kind of it. When you see the people that's had heart transplants, you're like, right, wow, that's hats off. That's different level.
I think, in my mind, if you've gone through what you've gone through or had a transplant, things like that, there's a certain point in your mind where you can either sit down and go, I'm just going to exist, or because potentially my life is going to be shortened, I'm going to do whatever I feel that is possible to make the most out of what I feel is the most out of life.
Yeah.
Um,
100%. Like when I did take it quite literal and I thought, right, I'll do indoor cycling, right? But then Racing Without Borders took off in the pandemic, and just there last year, kind of what helped me crack on for the British Transplant Games in Leeds was 14 of us who'd never met before in our lives. Well, tell a lie, my brother went too, so I'd met him. So 14 of us went to Mallorca, and from being told that you can't cycle again, they cycle on your bike in probably one of the loveliest places in the world to cycle your bike with guys that you met that had a similar passion to cycling with you through a pandemic was powerful. I'll say it so many times again that cycling is just a powerful tool for so many different things, a special mental sort of relief, and my mental medicine. I'm sure it's plenty of other people's mental medicine.
I definitely, working with you going into the games, it's definitely been the thing that's sort of almost propelled you further forward in your thought process of getting your message out there, that from diagnosis, it doesn't mean game over. It doesn't mean you need to back it off. There is, as you say, life after diagnosis.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what you're trying to do right now, because you said to me when you came back from the games, I really want to work with people, and you've set up a little group of people who've had diagnoses and transplants, etc., and what you're trying to do with that.
So for me, the transplant games is so badly publicized, right? Is that I went and got my hair cut when I was in Perth. So I was in the central business district of Perth where the games were being held out of. That was the HQ. And I went to a barber's, and everybody talks to their barber, right? I was on a taxi as well, and I mentioned about the transplant games. The barber, the taxi man, had no idea what the transplant games were. So that kind of struck a chord with me. I didn't know what they were until I was told about them, and I'm sure only the people that know about them are transplant recipients or transplant donors themselves, or maybe potentially people that are setting up the games. So for me, it was kind of also kind of found that cycling was almost a forgotten sport in it as well, because even in Perth, we were almost an hour away from the central business district, so there was an awful lot of support that could come and see how hard cycling is as a sport, even after transplant. And for me, it needs celebrated. And also participation levels need to be increased, right? So I can't be the only person in Northern Ireland that cycles, that wants to be competitive, that's had a transplant, but yet I'm the only one that went to the games. And I was the only one that went to Leeds in 2022. So I want to raise that. I want to find like-minded people like me. I've obviously found them from other nations. So we want to build that, and then build that kind of almost like an organization out of that, or maybe federation's the wrong word, but something that kind of that highlights transplant cycling that as an actual segment in the sport. So I reached out to the UCI, and they have no plans for transplant cycling. In fact, the words that I was quoted was, each nation's federation can choose to include transplant recipients or transplant cyclists in their para racing. They make up numbers. I'm like, right, okay, I'm not here to make up a number. That's not what I'm about, and that's not what I want to try and raise the awareness about it. I just want to, I'm not a great cyclist. I've never claimed to be a great cyclist, but I'll do the best that I can do. And I've got some merit off it, but I want to find more people like me. So the competition is harder. No, there's more people there. Like I know now one of the guys that's coming to the British Transplant Games, although he's a Dutch guy, he works out of Oxford, and he's representing Oxford Hospital in the Transplant Games, and he beat me twice in Perth in the time trial and the road race. So I have something to kind of aim for to try and get to that level. But it's meeting those type of guys, building up those relationships, and them having the same frustrations that I do here. They have the same frustrations where they're from as well. And so we wanted to connect and try and drive a bit of a mission. They raise awareness for transplant cycling and transplant games themselves. And like, there is life after diagnosis, after transplant. It's about raising awareness of having that chat with your family and loved ones about, are you on the organ register? Would you donate your blood stem cells? Would you donate an organ if you had to? And have some of those difficult conversations, because like for me, it obviously saved my life having a stem cell transplant. All those people, those inspiring people that I spoke to at the games, having lung transplants, heart transplants, liver, kidney, it's inspiring what they've come through, and everybody's had their own clinical course to get to where they've had to get to, but they've come out the other side and they've wanted to do something with it and not do what kind of you mentioned, just sit down and just okay, whatever, and this is the hand that I've been dealt. I'm just going to sit and fold. Whereas the ones at the games, they want to continue to play, and that's the message I want to get out, that we can still have fun. We can be competitive.
You've got similar messages to me. It's just like, just because, my message here at Velo is just because you're 40, 50 doesn't mean you need to sort of put a rug over your lap and do nothing.
Exactly.
And I'm hopefully showing people that you can do a shed load with your body if you work at it. And I refuse. So when people say, "Oh, don't you think you should?" Because people say it to me all the time. Slow down. I'm like, hell no! I'm getting stronger on a bike. I'm not slowing down for no one.
Exactly.
And I just think it's that attitude, isn't it? It's just like, I can do this. And let's be honest, it's bloody hard doing it on your own. And it's bloody hard, getting up and doing your training when you don't want to. And,
for me, it's that's the beauty of having someone like you as a coach, is that, right, I know enough about my body that I could probably set up my own training plans and do those type of things and kind of do the workouts that I know I have to do. But having someone like you kind of just giving you that nudge, being accountable to you, because think, oh shit, Simon's going to be so annoyed because I didn't do my training today. And it's just those small things. That's the value in having a coach, right? It's someone that you can just, like, we're a WhatsApp or a video or a voice call away from you just telling me, look, it's okay, you're having a crap day.
I think the cool thing about what I do, especially working with you, is just like, sometimes we plan something and we think, well, that's a great session, but sometimes we also know that actually it was too much or maybe not enough. And being so reactive to what you were thinking and feeling at the time, we could work, don't do this, do this.
Yeah.
Swap this around. There's a classic session that we know that works for you, but we need to get you in this physicality to be able to race well. So how do we kind of manipulate that training to make it fit so you physically and also mentally approached it in a different way? Because there were times, let's be honest, but times when I gave you sessions, you were like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I am done.
Yeah, I'm toast. Or you're halfway through it and you're like, how am I going to finish the rest of this set, knowing that you're about to just peel off the bike and lie in a heap on the floor? But
that was really, and that's the cool thing about what I do with the coaching. It's just not just that here's a program and forget that. It's just like, look, let's chat. Let's figure out what's working, what's not. And I think realistically, that's what great coaching in my mind should be. It's that constant understanding of the athlete and you feeding back.
Yeah.
What's I can't stand, or what I won't deal with is just people who just don't do it, and don't actually give me that ability to have that conversation, to feed it forward and backwards, because that's how you progress. That's how we understand you, etc. And it has been amazing working with you, and I'm excited about what can happen in the future, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's the small things, right, that you understand, that 1 second, the dog's about to kick off. The joys. So there's, I've lost my train of thought.
You talk about coaching and people pushing you forward and just making sure you're on the right track.
Yeah, it's just having that reassurance that we know what we're doing is kind of the right thing, and not just you knowing it, but me as well, and finding those small things out and those intricacies, kind of right, okay, I can push a bit more here, I need to come back off it here. And one of the things that I found out about it, and I think you preached this as well, that it's not about numbers. And like, I was aiming for this high FTP, let's get it up, but what I found is that, like, for actual lower power output, I was going faster. That's obviously to do maybe with not just kind of the training, maybe the aeroness of the bike and positions and things like that, but it's been able to hold and be consistent with the power for and different parts. Like we talk about strategies about the actual race course itself, and it's all right being able to set an FTP when the course is flat and you don't have any undulation but we had sort of two fairly hefty ramps, and we had to think about, right, we're going to be hitting those harder, we're going to be having coming off them, but you don't want to maybe drop your recovery too much. You want to hit hard, but you want to be able to recover again to go to the next time, because it's a lap based circuit. So it's those small things that you work on and not just direct numbers. It's been able to up and down have that, I suppose, have the performance levels or have that strength and power within your body that that, all right, you're going to push way above here on past VO2, but that you're going to be able to come back again because the work's been done.
Yeah. And this is what we worked on, is right. So we looked at the course and we were like, this is what, if we look at the actual how the course races. It's like, yes, there are certain aspects we need to build on your fitness, but you actually have to be able to race that course well.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we talked about when we were talking about training. It's like, this is the thought process behind it.
And because they were short enough, we could build intervals lap based almost, and that worked really well, because although it was bloody harder on the day, you can virtually train all you want, right? And you can kind of have your game plan in your head, but until you actually get on the course. And I never thought weight was going to be a factor, because when you look at the course profile, it doesn't look that, but obviously it was, right? So the guys are maybe 10 kilos lighter than me each. So that's obviously why I came third in the time trial and not first or second, because each time we went up those ramps, those guys were just taking seconds out of me on the 4 laps. So it's something now that I need to work on. I know kind of, right, so I can get the fitness, I can get the power. Now it's turned to kind of some of the more basic things, and let's now
I've always said it to you. You've got an engine, and that's the exciting thing. It's like, if we can get body composition to a really good point, you'll be, that Dutch guy is gonna have problems.
Yeah, I'm coming for you, Bart.
So look, I'm going to finish off the podcast with something, a question I always ask. If you could have a conversation with anybody, alive or dead, who would that be and why?
Oh, that's a tough one. Alive or dead? Well, I'm going to be a bit sappy in this one, but I think I would just say it to Aiden, and I would say kind of, he probably hasn't seen everything that I went through being so young, but like, use me as an example that you can push through stuff that potentially you're not supposed to, or life will have you tell you that you can't push through it, like accepting a new normal, never bike again, kind of persevere, kind of listen to your body, kind of listen to your mind, the good part of your mind, not the part that's telling you to give up. But yeah, I think that's who I would speak to, because I think when we look at kind of maybe society today, it's very much, there's a lot of mental issues and stuff going about, and if I can maybe sort of, I don't know, help inspire some people that you can still have hope in a weird world that we're living in at the moment, and kind of push through some of these barriers that are put in front of us, then yeah, I think that would be my message to Aiden, to keep trucking, keep moving forward. Don't give up.
That's cool. Look, thank you so much for coming on. I have to be honest, when you were talking to me about your cancer diagnosis and what you went through, I was a bit like, I was fascinated and gobsmacked all at the same time. I'm like, that's tough to go through, and there's part of me that thinks that a mental, psychological, emotional ability to endure, that's quite a special thing to have. And there also part of me thinking that cycling or any hard sport teaches you that, right?
Yeah.
So
I honestly think I mightn't have persevered as much if I hadn't had cycling previously, and been able to kind of like doing your local club 10-mile TTs and going to that inner place where you kind of you don't give up, you kind of just push through that. Your legs are telling you the whole Jens thing, shut up, and you're just driving through, and you're finishing out something that you started. And so it's kind of the same thing, and also as well. So I'm going to cycling. is obviously giving me strength for that as well, but it's also having like family and support too, right? So it's like having Aiden looking up at me as his daddy and kind of saying, right, I'm not going to give up for him type of a thing as well. And then obviously Lisa being, she hasn't went through it physically, but damn, she's been through it mentally, with me side by side every step. So you've that aspect of it as well, and they support me in the cycling, which is even more is great as well. The fact that they're supporting me through what they know was my mental medicine. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing what we do next.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, losing weight's first part. Just wiring this shut.
I'll pop something in the post.
Yeah. Cool.
Look, thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers, Simon.
I hope you enjoyed that podcast. If you got anything out of it, do me a favour, hit like and share this with any of your cycling friends. If it helps inspire them to do more with their training and their cycling, then that's all good. I'll put links into the bottom of this video and on a podcast so that you can connect with Richie. So if you listen to his story and you want to have a chat to him further, or you know someone that might benefit from his help and advice, the best thing you can do is get in touch with him. I hope you enjoy this podcast, and I'll be back next month.